It's time for another video talking about the last few books I've been reading. First up is a book by Daniel Everett called Don't Sleep, There Are Snakes. So Daniel Everett was a Christian missionary, and he went to the Piraha people in Brazil, deep in the Amazon, to try and teach them Christianity. And at the time he went, in 1977, nobody spoke Piraha fluently, and the Piraha people spoke no other languages. And everybody who tried to speak Piraha came away saying, I've got no idea what these people are saying, this language is completely incomprehensible. It was a real Darmok Angelad at Tanagra style situation. And he did eventually learn the Piraha language, but he also discovered two other very important things. The first is that Piraha is completely unlike any other language on Earth. It's so difficult, but it has very special linguistic reasons for being difficult. And the second thing was that he didn't believe in God anymore. So he went and he learned this completely obscure language to preach to these people and then figured out that he didn't believe it. So it's a really fascinating look at all the time he spent there and his personal journey as well as the linguistic details. So just as an example, in English there's the word economics, and you can also pronounce it economics. And to a fluent English speaker, we know that that's the same word. He says Piraha is like that, but for almost every word and with so many variations. So at one point he describes how he tried to learn the Piraha word for nose, and he's talking in Piraha to the guy and he says, so what's this? And the guy goes, nose, and he repeats back to him, so, oh, nose, and the guy goes, yeah, your bows. He goes, what, you bows? You said it was nose. Yeah, your schloes, yeah. Wait, what? You said what, bows, nose, what? Yeah, your flows, yeah, your goes, your zoes, and there's just like so many different variations of the same word, and he says it's so difficult, it took him years to learn it. So it does get quite technical and quite difficult when he's touching on the linguistics, but if you do have the time and the inclination and it sounds interesting, I do recommend that one. Next up is a book that I read when I was on holiday. It's called Changing Anarchism. It's an anthology of essays by lots of different authors on the subject of anarchism, the political theory, and it talks about topics like just the theory itself, but also resistance tactics, anarchic environmentalism, anarchic theatre, anarchic sexuality, anarchic education. It's a really very broad overview on lots of different topics, looking at them through an anarchist lens. And that's something that I didn't really appreciate, was just how broad anarchism as a class of views is. I would say that if you're not familiar with any anarchist theory, you probably want to read an article or two or just get a basic grounding in it first, because it does assume that you are more or less basically on board with what, or not on board, ideologically, but it assumes that you understand what anarchism is, essentially. If you've got this view, like a lot of people have, that anarchism is just like chaos, like, oh, it's like the Joker, which it's not, then you might be a little bit confused in the first few chapters and you might miss out. I am probably going to make a video, beginner's guide to anarchism, at some point in the near future, so maybe if you're going to get this one, maybe hold off and watch that video first. And last but not least for today is a book that I don't have to show you because I read it electronically on my laptop, but it's called Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams. So the book is an economic history of slavery in the British Empire, specifically. What I didn't realise was just what a capital B, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs business slavery was. People were making mad bank off this. So obviously if you've got a lot of slaves, you've got a lot of cheap labour, but if you're going to have slaves, you need to have chains, and you need to have padlocks and iron bars, so you need metal mining and refining. If you're going to have sugar coming in, you need sugar refining. You're going to need ships, so that means you need timber and canvas and sails and people to actually be on the ships and crew them, and you're going to need candles and lanterns and food and rum and provisions for all the slaves and the slave owners and the plantations. If you've got a lot of money from slavery, so what are you going to do with that money? Well, why not go into finance now that you've got a whole lot of capital? And so many people had employment because of slavery. And in that, I'm not including slaves, obviously, who were not employed, they were enslaved, but whole economies were built on this, is my point. It wasn't just an isolated little thing that was going on. This was the basis of entire nations' economies. Like Bristol, the city of Bristol, became a big city, what it is today, because that's where the sugar refineries were. It became a city because of slavery. And Liverpool was just a town, and then it became a city because it was a slave port. And Glasgow, as well, became a city because it got involved in slavery. There are banks and insurance companies still operating today which was started with money from slavery. It's amazing just how much Britain was built on the backs of slaves. He also includes testimonies and arguments from people at the time who were against abolishing slavery, And it's bizarre because you see all the same arguments that you hear people making on the news now. People going, oh, you can't get rid of slavery, businesses won't be able to compete. You'll put thousands and thousands of people out of work, and small businesses won't be able to compete, and whole cities or whole economies are built on this. You'll crash the economy overnight if you try and get rid of slavery. And it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that people would ever defend the enslavement of human beings because it makes other people profit. And it just makes you think, like, in 100 years' time, what are they going to look back on us and think, oh my God, I can't believe they thought that was okay? As well as that, he describes the way in which slavery ended. And it ended in part because of popular resistance to it and abolitionists. But he says also, it stopped being profitable. And it wasn't until the interests of capital and the interests of money turned against slavery that it really caught the attention of anyone and that it really ended. So by the time it ended, it was not really being profitable anymore. And the same people who defended slavery, 10 years, 20 years before, suddenly when it stopped making the money, changed their mind and said, oh, it's horrible, we mustn't do it anymore. Oh no, we should stop everyone else doing it as well because they're competing with us and it's really cheap and we don't like it anymore. It's amazing just the way people were blinded by greed, I guess. So Capitalism and Slavery, I recommend, of the 3 books today, I recommend that one the most. It's eye-opening and amazing and heartbreaking as well. You can get it for free. You can read it for completely free for no pounds and no pence. I'll include a link to it below where you can find it. Those are the last 3 books I've read. Thank you very much to the fans who sent me some of them. If you want to send me books, I have an Amazon reading list of books. If you wanted to contribute to the show and contribute reading materials, I'll include a link to that below. Alternatively, as you know, you can always support the show at patreon.com/philosophytube.